he's guilty of something. We don't know what. And this was a
It's like a
gigantic fishing expedition. I was being investigated. I was hounded by these people. And every day you go to work and every day you go home, you don't know, Marlon, are you going to get a knock on the door? Are they going to try to say I did something I never did?
Welcome back to the IA Guy Police Podcast here with your host, Marlon Marrache. Today, another banger, man, another special one. I got my boy Sal Greco, but you know what? Before we bring him on, I got to tell you, man, he was an all-star food purveyor. Of course, since I'm from Peru, English is supposed to be my second language, and I actually had to look up what purveyor actually means until Sal actually hit me back on text saying, I said, hey, bro, purveyor, question mark. He said, it's a distributor, man. So, you know, he used to distribute food. I got to ask, man, hey, Sal, man, thanks for coming, man. Code 6. What's going on, bro?
It's good to see you. I mean, last time I saw you, you were on my show. And, of course, you were at home, so your background was a little different. I said, we needed you to go back to the studio and have that. So looking at this now, that's the Marlon I know, that right there, sitting down with that background behind him.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Man, help me out here. Talk to me about distributorship before you came on to be a cop. What was that?
So I spent, my father worked in a food company, so he's entrenched in the food distribution business, which is, food purveyor for restaurants, pizzerias, some hotels. And, I had quite the life before I was in law enforcement because I got to engage with many people. I was just a kid, then a teenager, then an adult. And then I did it for a little bit on my own, but it was around 2005 or 6 that the economy started tanking a little bit. It got a little worse. It got worse. So I said, you know what? Maybe my friend was a police officer at that time. And he says, I just got on. You should do it since you're really good at certain, you're good with people. I think you would excel at this. So, I had my family, they were in the, in law enforcement as well. And they were like, I don't know, really your call if you want to go through with it. And so I did. But of course, I do have a history with pizzerias, restaurants, the hashtag Imagine Eating is Good. I'm one of the guys that's constantly put that out there.
Okay.
So I like when you see my stuff, when, I'm at a restaurant or I'm taking pictures or photos of food. And it's always because deep inside me, I always want to help others. So the purpose of that is trying to build this person's business. Say, hey, Imagine Eating is Good. Go to this guy's restaurant because you got to help out the small businesses. The same thing I did as a police officer. I used to always go into the small businesses and say, hi, how are you? And is everything okay? You sure you don't have any problems? Nobody's, coming around here at night. And, that's how you build a relationship. It's kind of like the community policing way actually works also in business if you could apply it.
Yeah, you know what? We, right, because we're up there, I'm in my 50s. I'm sure you're either right below me or near.
Yeah.
50s, I would say that community policing is it's just a buzzword that pretty much stands for us, engaging with the small business owners, like you said. And you know what? Distributorship, what you did, kind of just the segue into police functions, right, into police work, really helped you out, man. You're right. If you got a good personality and you're out there trying to do God's work and help people out, there's certain careers where you're going to have a smooth transition. So yeah, man, thanks for sharing that with me. So, hey man, let's get right to it. So you were in the academy in 2008. What I wanted to ask you is that here you are in the NYPD Academy, and did anybody walk in and say anything about internal affairs, or did someone from IA walk in and say, "This is who we are. These are our functions," et cetera, et cetera?
I believe towards the end, when we finally were close to graduating, you have a day where you would go in the auditorium. Now, the police academy then was on 20th Street and 3rd Avenue, between 3rd and 2nd Avenue. That was the original police academy. Now it's at College Point, Queens, so it's a whole different presentation. But at that time, we would all be jammed in because it's 3,000. I think my class was the last big class I think they had. It was in December of 2008 that we graduated. So we had a pretty big class that graduated, and we all jammed into this auditorium, and we had a presentation from Charles Campisi, who was at the time the chief of internal affairs. So he gave his whole speech about corruption, what you should do if you got to notify people, if someday you end up in internal affairs, the whole spiel you get, because everyone always says, "Oh, I guess the terminology you always hear is cops is you don't want to be a rat or you don't want to be a snitch." So he's trying to give you the whole spiel of being a rat, or telling us something that's corrupt, that doesn't make you a rat, or whatever that's supposed to mean. So that was the whole spiel. But you did get a whole day where you got a lot of information coming from the chief and I think one of his sergeants. So there is a day that's set just for that in the academy.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but no one really cares or goes through one ear out the other. You just want to graduate, and you're like, you know what? Got it. I'm not going to be a rat, and I'm not snitching on anybody. Have a nice day, and then we move forward.
Usually what you get is don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
A snitch.
Don't be a snitch.
Don't be a snitch. Don't be a rat. That's what they always say. Don't you be this? Or they'll say like Officer Joe, he ratted out Officer John or whatever it is. But you look all these years later and go, well, is it really you're a rat if you are discussing to authorities about a nightclub extortion racket, which the New York City Police Department is or was involved in very recently? Or are you doing what you're supposed to do as a police officer, saying, I found out about this or I witnessed this, and it's my job and my duty to either, since I can't investigate some people that are higher ranked than me, to inform the correct authority, whether it be internal affairs, the Department of Investigation, the FBI, the Southern District of New York, whoever it is it my job and my place to notify them of what's going on above me in the New York City Police Department, which, has political implications as well, this nightclub extortion racket thing. So, I mean, that's the kind of things you have to judge. Do you want to be known as the guy that brings that down, kind of like a serpent cut, or they're going to call you a rat and a snitch, and you let that, that will determine what you do as a cop. I don't know. It's really an issue of integrity and morality, I guess, right?
No, 100%. What was your first impression of internal affairs? In other words, what did your training officers, when you were a young cop, what is it that you knew about IA besides the fact that you had this presentation by the deputy chief?
Well, the way they explain it more is they tell you about like the big fish, big enchilada kind of stuff. But in the police department, NYPD, you don't really have it. Internal affairs is like the big, anything goes to them, but really they siphon a lot of stuff. Because look, a lot of stuff is not serious. It's kind of like a minor thing, or it might be something we don't know. So they'll knock it down to what they call inspections. Now, inspections is each borough has their own group. It's the same thing, a sergeant, a lieutenant, or maybe two sergeants, a lieutenant. And they go around and they either inspect police officers out in the street, or, while they're working on patrol in their car, or they come to the precinct, or if there's some allegation, they'll be first to show up before this goes all the way up the chain, or they'll knock it down to these people. At the same time, in your command, in your precinct where you work, there's usually an integrity control officer, which is kind of the liaison from the precinct back to internal affairs, because this person, whether it be a lieutenant, which it should be, or the assistant integrity control officer, which shouldn't really be going on, it's a sergeant. But these are the people that would handle the kind of like misconduct or small little things, like John came in 5 minutes late, but we're saying that he might have not gave a slip, meaning the 28, which is what you would give at that time to say I was 5 minutes late. Also, is he what we say, taking time, stealing time? So these are the kind of little issues that someone like that would handle. Of course, now if there's guys taking hours and days, and we have a whole bunch of cops or supervisors doing that, that would go up the chain, probably from inspections and above to internal affairs. So the police department, NYPD, set up a little different, where there's a buffer almost before you get to internal affairs, like a middleman almost. And if it's really serious, then you will see internal affairs, and that's like different groups. So there's group one. Group one does all the supervisors, but as you've learned that they were covering up things in group one. Group 25, I believe, or 24 is the I guess the federal bureau. That was the one that was looking at me trying to say you're involved in a federal issue, federal crime, something like that. So in each, and then there's other groups that monitor that particular area, which would be whatever, Brooklyn South, Brooklyn North, the 71st Precinct 7. And again, you'll have the buffer, which is inspection. So it's kind of unique how they do it, but also, again, there's been a lot of issues in this administration in the NYPD under Eric Adams as the mayor that involves corruption coming from internal affairs itself, which is unique. It's a unique situation, but it's something that's been brewing for a long time. So you want to have faith in this, but really, in the end, everyone answers to one person, which would be you think as a police commissioner, but apparently you have deputy mayors. You had the mayor himself, which is really uncanny and unprecedented that the mayor would put himself into these situations. So New York City is its own animal. That's the best way to describe it.
You know what? As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, we often use the phrase cops should police cops. That's the way we should be. I'm okay with civilian oversight. I know there is civilian oversight. I don't mind a fresh set of eyes that doesn't really know a lot about law enforcement functions, but you know what? It's okay. I open up the door to other avenues of analysis and examinations. But when you start talking about, like you were mentioning, where the internal affairs of that police department is cutting corners and as corrupt as the goes, you kind of wonder yourself, you know what, man, how do we get to some clarity or to the to the bottom of the truth? It's really difficult. Let me ask you this, since we're talking about all this, because this is the segue to your IA story. And I know when you and I met, and you guys are doing great stuff, and we'll talk about that a little later, you, John, and Eric. I remember, and we talked about this when you invited me to your show, where I remember when I was an advocate working in internal affairs, represented the chief of police, prosecuting cops, right? Because there's this tribunal hearing. And I remember in the office, we had this case where it said the allegation was associating or association with a known or convicted felon. And believe it or not, all of us in the office were like, what does that mean, right? So then we go to the manual and we start reading it. And of course, it's so ambiguous. My boss, who was an advocate, he's a lieutenant, he came back for his second tour. But when he was working cases, he's like, I was here like 8 years ago. And, and I'm taking you back to 2011 to 2015. So he was speaking from like 2006 or 2007. He's like, I never heard of, a cop being accused of this particular allegation. And I find it very interesting and very fascinating that I actually got to meet somebody that went through something like that. So I'll leave the floor up to you, man. I know that you went through the storm, if you will, with NYPD, with this allegation of associated with a convicted felon, man. What was that all about?
Yeah, it's really insane to think, because in the statute, see, in the New York City Police Department, we have what's called a patrol guide, and this governs the entire police department, no matter what rank you are, from police commissioner on down, even civilians. Okay. Any member of service has to oblige by this book, whatever the rules are. But it's more of a, we'll use this book against you at any moment, meaning at any time they could come to say, we're going to apply this to you because whatever. And it's sad that they do things in witch hunt ways where, Chief Joe has a friend who's Sergeant John who doesn't like Officer Jack, and therefore they'll abuse this thing and use whatever they can against you. Right. So in this book, at this time, because it's slightly been revised, as you know, you were on my show, we discussed this. So the rule states in there, it's under, I believe, functions of a police officer, functions of being on the job. It says you cannot wrongfully or knowingly associate with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity. Now, Marlon, that sounds like, as it is a fact, 70% of this country has some kind of criminal record or summons or something that would define them as this person.
Mm-hmm.
They used this on me. And why did they do that? Well, we go back to the infamous days of Washington, D.C. on January 5th and 6th. Yes, I was in D.C. Have I been or have I been anywhere near the Capitol? No, not that day, not any day. In fact, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been in the Capitol more times than this guy right here. But there was an allegation that stated that I was, first, I was security for the person I mentioned here, Roger Stone. People probably will say, who's that? Well, Roger Stone, close confidant to now President Trump once again, and he's been in the political sphere for 40 years. But if you can remember, he was the guy that CNN had the cameras on, and 40 SWAT-cladded FBI agents showed up with rifles, taking him out of the house for the process crime of lying to Congress. That's what the charge was. Okay. So he was indicted in 2019. From 2019 to 2020, 2020, he was convicted in late 2019. 2020 was his sentencing. He was ultimately commuted. His sentence was commuted by the president and then pardoned right before Christmas of that year in 2020. Okay. So I was in D.C. with Roger Stone, and of course, he's already been pardoned. I don't know what rule they're trying to state, what kind of criminal activity he's involved in. So they started a whole 19-month witch hunt. They were claiming, and they used a new term that, as you know, as a police officer, every police department, if you do security work off-duty hours, which in NYPD, they have a thing called pay detail. You do it in uniform, and you have to apply for it. But if you do off-duty security work, you would have to file the proper paperwork. But you have to actually be doing this. You have to actually be getting paid. Now, Roger Stone, he is my friend. He did not live in New York City. In fact, I was friends with him from 2018 all the way till now. But in this time, there was a year gap. They told me I couldn't speak to him. So from 2018, we'll say, to my trial, 2022, which infamously Roger Stone did show up to my trial, the internal hearing. 3 times he was in New York City. 3. I could not be associated with him, giving him any kind of stuff involving New York City or any kind of secret information. In fact, when they investigated me, they looked through my entire history of going on the computer. There's nothing there. They said I didn't violate any of these rules. Because usually criminal association would also mean misuse of departmental computer. That wasn't there because there was none. They checked, and it wasn't running names. I did my job. I showed up to work. As you can see by the awards behind me, I would say I was a modeled police officer, close to it. Very active with no negatives. There's one lawsuit on my record for a gun arrest I had. There's nothing there. There weren't any CCRBs. There's nothing there. So you have nothing to hang your hat saying he's corrupt, he's dirty, because that was never the allegation. The original allegation was I was doing security for Roger Stone with no evidence of this. And then the second letter came in after January 6th that said I wanted a civil war in this country.
Wow.
I don't know what that even means, because the pictures that they used were public pictures from 3 years ago of me at an event with Roger. It's really mind-numbing to think that somebody will go to this length for, we don't know, we never find out exactly what, because it was a blank letter. So they called me in, they investigated me. I went through 6 hours in total of interrogations to find out that they said in between this that I was, they got an administrative subpoena for my records. Okay. So as you know, in internal affairs, if you want to make it, which was a C case, which means likely to end a criminal, like a charge. That's what they said.
Yeah.
If that's the case, you will need to go to a judge and start getting subpoenas and warrants, right? That never happened in this case with me, because after the first interview, they learned that there was nothing there. I never went to the Capitol. They actually spoke to somebody, and that person said, "What are you talking about? This guy was never there." And it happened to be a guy that did security that day for real for Roger. So I was never security. So this charge of uncompensated security that I got was madness, because I've never gotten a pay stub. I never did security. Like I said, I would only see Roger when I went to Florida for vacations.
Yeah.
So other than talking on the phone here or there, or the 3 times we went to New York City, what security are you talking about? There is no security with him. So they use these administrative subpoenas, Marlon, and in these subpoenas is how they got my phone records. They got the Willard Hotels records illegal. They basically coaxed them into giving them footage, which is illegal the way they did it, because I actually have the tape. It's quite disturbing. And then they got all these records on me, social media, using the same administrative subpoena, which they've been in trouble for, and you can look this up. The sergeant is this guy by the name of Jeremy Ornstein. He's got multiple lawsuits on him. He's unethical. This guy should be fired and lose all his pension. But, of course, the New York City Police Department works backwards. They like those kind of guys. They don't like the honest guy. So they did all of this to find out in the end, well, all we have is that he associated with this guy we don't like. So we need to fire him.
So it's personal.
And it's personal.
Yeah. Let me interject here, because walk me through, if you're familiar with the process, and, you know, these are so much to ask that from my end, for lessons learned. You went through your administrative compelled interview with Internal Affairs, and you were telling them, was that the 6-hour interrogation you were talking about?
Yeah, the first one was about almost close to 2 hours.
Got it. So you're there for a long time. They're asking you all kinds of questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said at some point, did they consider criminal filings?
The actual paperwork, when they go by numbers, is an M case, I think, is like a misdemeanor or a minor. The C means criminal. My case has a C on it.
Okay.
So likely to end in a charge, likely to end in criminal charges. That's what that stands for.
Yeah, that's a little backwards.
Yeah, they already had deemed he's guilty of something. We don't know what. And this was a gigantic fishing expedition.
Fishing, that's what I was going to say. It's like a fishing expedition. I say that because the way the process should work, and I'm speaking from my beloved LAPD, is when you have serious allegations of misconduct that are criminal offenses, just let's take a simple DUI, right? You get a DUI off duty. Well, criminal goes first. You have to go to the DA's office and say, hey, I got this officer who was off duty and got into a DUI. You know, here you go. I got this officer who was off duty and got into a bar fight, and we're looking at battery charges. You know, I got this very decorated officer in NYPD who's associating with this convicted felon, and we think, or we have this, you know, assumption that he's involved in criminal activity. Well, I can tell you that if it's a battery, okay, great. If it's a DUI, nothing you can do about that because it happened. But this one, it doesn't make any sense, which my point is that the criminal comes first, then comes the admin. So by the time you're doing the admin, the compelled interview, we're not even considering any criminal filings because we've already opened and closed that door. What do you think?
Yeah, well, here's the thing with that. So if it's just admin, obviously, it's like you said, if there was a criminal or something there, you would be suspended.
Correct. And sent home, for that matter, waiting, right?
So, Marlon, the entire time, all the way up until the last day when they showed up to my house and said, you've been terminated, I was full duty with a gun, told to go out there, write summonses, make arrests. I actually had a court case that I was convicted the guy on. He was found guilty the whole time. So if I was this big bad cop, some big bad guy, then why was I full duty and was going out there as if nothing ever happened?
Yeah.
So again, there's more to this than just it's a C case. It's some kind of political case in nature. It's not. There is no. He's guilty. Is a criminal. We don't think he's not worthy because at the very end, the administrative the trial commissioner in my case said that this was conduct unbecoming of an officer and that this is not what the police. But if the police department doesn't stand for this, then why wasn't I ever suspended? You had no problem in making an arrest in the middle of this.
Yeah.
So it makes no sense what they did other than. Again, it's political. It's that one in a lifetime case, you know?
No, totally. I can see the conduct unbecoming. I can see that allegation. Hey, you know what? This reflects very negative. We don't want you to be hanging out with a convicted felon, blah, blah, blah. I get all that, but still, let me ask you this. Do you know of any other sworn colleague of yours, sworn officer, that has gone through typical allegations that you faced, if any?
Nobody with this kind of stuff, like what they did to me.
Uh-huh.
But in my own case, doing my own research,
Mhm.
there's a deputy commissioner that should have been fired twice already, purging himself on the stand. He's on that no credibility. You know, he has like no credibility
Yeah,
left
the
because he was
Brady
put on
list.
that list.
The Brady list.
Yeah, and that the Brady list, which is Kaz Dodry. You look him up. He's the deputy commissioner
Mhm.
of operations. He was an assistant commissioner. He was a police officer that somehow jumped 7 ranks in 2 years, which is unheard of. And he's in the center of all the corruption that you hear stemming out of the New York City Police Department. This gentleman was on the stand, perjured himself, not once, but twice. At the same period that I was getting terminated and judged by the exact same police commissioner and first deputy commissioner, this gentleman was, but he received 20-day vacation hit for giving misleading statements. They said I did because I would never say what they wanted me to say. Is that they kept saying, "You're Roger Stone security. You're Roger Stone security." You can look at the transcript. You'll see them ask this question God knows how many times.
Okay.
And the answer is no. If I'm in security, I would say it. But you don't even have a pay stub. You have nothing. This guy's never given me a dime, and you're saying I'm security. Just because I'm picture next to him. I can say that about many people.
Yeah.
If you're picture with someone, Marlon, that makes you his security.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that makes you security because you're a cop and you may or may not be carrying whatever the case is. So that's what they kept insisting on. In fact, one of the charges was that I was uncompensated security on January 5th and 6th, which is insane. And then the fact that I was criminally associating, they're saying, with Roger. And the last one was misleading statements, which Kaz Dodry got charged with that at the exact same time I was, only he lost 20 vacation days and got promoted like 2 months later to third grade or second grade detective, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
And he's on that Brady list. So there's one comparator where you go, what the hell's going on there?
Yeah.
Because that means that, I guess, they say what the scales of justice, that I think they're tipped in one favor or the other, depending on who you are or who you know or what you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That is ultimately, unfortunately, that's just the business that we're in, and it's not just this profession. It happens in a lot of professions too. Is there is that double standard, like there is in probably any other profession as well. Sal, let me ask you this: when this first IA got initiated against you, up until the time that you got served or you were notified, how long was that process?
The total amount, I'd say I got notified on January 25th of 2021. And we already knew it was going to be about this whole thing because there was all this chatter. They were like, "Oh, we know you were down there, but I'm sure you didn't go and do anything." No, I didn't do anything. You don't have any evidence of me doing anything because I didn't. But from that day on, everything went south. They were investigating me, and unfortunately, in the middle of this, my father gets sick. Unbeknownst to us, he has stage 4 brain cancer, so he's done. And this is a guy, I mean, I spent my whole life with my dad. Even though I was a police officer, I couldn't really see him much in those years because they lived in Pennsylvania. But I did what I could. But remember the whole food business thing, I grew up with my dad. Yeah. My dad in the Italian-American community, because, we're Sicilian, he's a legend. The pizzerias, they loved him. He did so many things to help out the small businesses, help people get business, tell them about this or that. And nobody even knew that he was sick because I wasn't allowed to use the cell phone because later on they would actually say, oh, one of my friends, which you will know, he's actually running for city council now. He was a WABC host, Frank Morano. They actually ran his name, which has nothing to do with my investigation because underneath it said no criminal record.
Right.
Which, what are you even running this guy's name for? There's no allegation about Frank Morano and Sal Greco doing anything. So my father got sick. So I went to the hospital the day before my birthday, and it's 4 years ago, actually. And there's a car, tailing me all the way there. all the way to Pennsylvania. It's about an hour and a half away from my house, from Staten Island to there. So I get inside the hospital, and unbeknownst to me, this is going to be my father's final hours. And I'm there. When I look out the window, I see the clown in the car. And then he drives away. And later on, my father passed away. There was never any real closure. I can't call people because, as you know, they're looking to see who I call. So if they're going to mention Roger Stone, now do I know who all my father's friends are? No, but I have a few of them on my phone. Now, do I know if they had a parking ticket in the set? I don't know, because these are the kind of guys that literally later on would tell me I can't go visit my neighbor who owns a cannoli store in Mulberry Street because in 1980 he was arrested for something. So I have to deal with this is the kind of stuff I was dealing with. Yet the police department to this day walks in his store. I wasn't allowed to go in there. And at any time, at no time this store was alleged to have done anything criminal or there's any criminal association case there. None. Zero. In fact, the first precinct and the fifth precinct, which are right down the street, and the other one not too far down the street on Canal, they go there all the time to buy cannolis and have coffee. So that's what I was dealing with. Yeah. So it was never any closure. Then they interrogated me for another 4 hours. They asked me the same questions again, show me 1,000 pictures from 10,000 angles, and they still can only say, you are wrong for hanging out with Rogers. That's basically, he's your friend and he shouldn't be. And that's the gist of the case. But the sad part was I was being investigated. I was hounded by these people. And every day you go to work and every day you go home, you don't know, Marlon, are you going to get a knock on the door? Are they going to try to say I did something I never did? Because there was no pictures of evidence or anything. I've never been to this stupid building. The Capitol's never there. Just because you're in D.C., which, by the way, I was trapped in a hotel. We were watching everything on screen what unfolded there at the Capitol, and we had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
We don't know anything that happened that day. It was such a chaotic day, and everything I said panned out, whether it was I told them then all the way till now. But they chose to run with this narrative, which is something we learned today very big with these people is they like to hook people in to low information hook lines, control the narrative because it's perception management. So the perception at that time is somebody has to pay. Yeah. Someone has to pay for the allegation of, is the police department involved in any of this activity? Which it wasn't. There was no NYPD officer that was involved with that ever. Yeah. I don't think there was a guy that was arrested, like retired 15 years. Right. He's retired 15 years. He doesn't represent the police department. And no one was there from the police department. That's the thing. Hey, it's Sal, uncanny.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this. When you, I guess the question I really want to ask is, did you know, well, let me begin by asking you this way. As you sit here today and reflect on this whole incident, did you know you were going to get terminated?
Well, I got to be honest. I thought if you have a rule of law and you have due process, you should be cleared because there was nothing illegal done. There was nothing illegal done. And the true statement of that order, which now they actually altered because of my lawsuit against them, if you're associating with someone likely or reasonably, and that's 70% of America, and also, but well, are you associating with a drug dealer? Are you associating with a human trafficker? Like, these are the questions you need to ask. Yeah. But if you're with these people and yet there's been no crimes committed between you and this person, nor has there been a indictment or charge or anything brought forth, then why are you going after one person saying, you hung out with this guy, we don't like him, and he has a record, therefore you must be terminated? When, Marlon, we came to find out about what I was discussing earlier, the nightclub extortion racket and the entire Con Sofrito scandal that happened there, because this is a nightclub in the Bronx that was in existence at this time, that had no permits for their little shed they had. They were holding parties. The liquor license was under the police commissioner's retired NYPD lieutenant, his brother. The police commissioner himself was hanging out there every night. Oh, by the way, the manager and the true owner of the place is a mob associate, self-admitted criminal. His name is Jimmy Rodriguez. He owned Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, which was, I mean, I can't begin to tell you the list of criminality, the things that happened there in the time that it was open. but it was another hot spot. Politicians, cops, all these bigwigs hung out there. So the police department, and I'm talking about the bigwigs there, the police commissioner himself, deputy commissioners like Wendy Garcia, chief of department, who's also now in a scandal. He's out of there. Jeffrey Madry, Kaz Dawdry, Timothy Pearson, the deputy mayor, Phil Banks, the deputy mayor. They're no longer there now. Eric Adams himself, they're all entrenched in this place, associating with a guy who's 100% reasonably believed to have engaged in unlikely to engage in criminal activity. He's been arrested. He doesn't even hide this stuff. How is nobody there, including the cops that were there? The PBA the former president of PBA union, Pat Lynch, numerous parties there.
Yeah.
This detective guy, Joe Ayala, runs the Hispanic Society. He's hanging out there, smiling with Jimmy Rodriguez. There's numerous parties being held there by these fraternal organizations. Every week they were there. Every week. This was going on for a while until I caught on and it blew the whistle because they're all over the internet. And then that's it. Party time is over. They weren't paying the rent. We found out that so they had a report done in late 2021 that featured a report from a cop in that precinct, right? It's the 45th precinct to the human trafficking unit, something like that. It's a human trafficking unit. There's a report there. So obviously there are discussions between two units in the police department about human trafficking in this place. And then the state liquor authority was investigating it, and then that disappeared.
Wow.
And they got a liquor license anyway, which is these. So while you're looking at me saying I'm this big bad, this was all going on during the same time. You guys are hanging out with this guy involved in all kinds of stuff. Fat Joe shows up, Peter Guns, 2 convicted felons, this other rapper guy, Eric B., all hanging out, police department, smiling, shaking hands. But I'm the bad guy?
Yeah.
So now you got to ask yourself what was really going on. And they are involved in an extortion racket because there's lawsuits piling up. There's witnesses. There are other cops. There actual integrity control officer of the 34th precinct witnessed the twin brother, the other brother of Eddie Caban. He was going into this precinct, the 3-4, with the commanding officer going around nightclubs, and they were helping some and weren't. What I mean by is if you complain, there's 40 guys outside this nightclub making noise. No one could sleep. Triple parked cars outside. No, police don't go there. They found this out. This is all in this lawsuit.
Yeah.
And again, it's the same people. Remember, James Caban, Eddie Caban, Richie Caban, running Concha Frito, but they're involved in all these other nightclubs. So and the mayor's office.
Wow.
But I'm the bad guy, Marlon. I'm the bad guy.
You're the bad guy, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Sal, let me ask you this. Is this your way of closure by you starting your Sal Greco show? What do you think?
I think, I didn't really think, I've never done things for myself because I could just be quiet and be like, all right, well, I let my body of work speak for itself. But
Right.
I'm trying to give a platform and actually inform people because there's many in this country that are low information.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? Many people just fall on Sean Hannity said something. Therefore, don't even look and investigate. It's got to be true. Or CNN told me this. Don't think about it. It's true because they're doing things based on your feelings. I'm a guy who's based on facts and evidence, court paperwork, legal documents. I mean, that's how the world works.
Yes.
Anyone could throw conjecture and hyperbole out there. I'm not that kind of guy.
Got it.
But I could connect the dots kind of like we did as cops. So I did this because I wanted to have give a voice to people that are A, a victim, or B, have something really important, and to show someone that is low information to become informed. And out of nowhere, it's like coming out of a cocoon. Because a lot of people, Marlon, and it's actually both sides of the political spectrum, liberal, Democrat and Republican, conservative or liberal, many of them just close the blinders off, believe whoever said something, and that's it. That is it. And they don't even do anything. Like this whole Eric Adams case, Marlon, there's a narrative that's been put out there that he was targeted by Joe Biden's administration because he spoke out against the migrant crisis. Mm-hmm. The same migrant crisis he was getting paid. Him and his pal, Timmy Pearson, were being investigated for migrant shelter contracts. In fact, Tim Pearson, in a lawsuit, referenced this by saying, where's my crumbs at? Okay? Mm-hmm. Eric Adams, who campaigned to be the sanctuary city mayor, who said that in 2020 called President Trump's family, white supremacist, and him. It's online still. You can see this. He also wants illegal immigrants to vote in local elections. There's a law that was passed because he didn't veto it, and now it's in the courts, and it's either going to become a law or the judge. He's listening to all sides of the parties, but it's a law right now that needs to be struck down by the courts, or it's going to be 100% enacted, which means this next mayor election, 800,000 illegal immigrants will be voting thanks to now the blue MAGA mayor, Eric Adams. We're going to forget about that because Trump wants to get involved in his case. But one of the narratives there was what I said. But here's the facts. And we came to find out about it because 7 brave prosecutors, yes, 7. I'm not saying 7 liberals, 7 Republicans, 7 people that worked for a living said, we'd rather lose our jobs than actually put our name to something that is unethical and illegal and corrupt, and dropping this case that has no grounds or merit. There's no merits on his dismissal of the case because it's jam-packed with stuff, and you're finding out more and more. But the truth was, Marlon, the Eric Adams case, as the head of the Southern District of New York stated, started in 2017. Where the hell was Joe Biden then, and what migrant crisis was going on in 2017? But low information continue to listen to the parrotive low information talking point to hook the low information people in, control that narrative, and it's the perception management. And all of a sudden, the true Eric Adams is being hidden to give you the other side of his face with him smiling, saying, I was always a Republican. I was always a good guy. That nightclub concert, what are you talking about? Human trafficking. I wasn't there for that. No, we weren't doing that. There's no nightclub extortion. No, what are you talking about? And that's what's going on here, Marlon. It's quite disgusting. But all it takes is a little research and the time to read stuff, because that's what we had to do, right?
Yeah,
Marlon, we swore an oath. We swore an oath.
Yes.
So we have to do that. But the regular people don't want to, but they really should if they want to stay informed.
Yeah, no. Sal, what type of I should say feedback, we'll start there, ever since you started your show? How is NYPD? Let me ask you this. Does NYPD know about your show? I would imagine so, right?
Oh, yes. Well, they know. And so does Eric Adams. He himself, who behind the scenes with my own case, has stated that he wants to, quote, starve me out, end quote, which means he wants to drag my case because I embarrassed him and his people. But it's not embarrassing. It's actually, I showed that they're actual criminals, and there's a crime syndicate that's involved in this just from the police department alone, including his office. But it expands because they got there's foreign real estate interest. We have all kinds of foreign assets. In reality, I don't know if Eric Adams himself isn't a foreign asset, because apparently he can't be prosecuted, and he also can't be removed from office. I don't know who he is or what he knows and why that can't happen, because very clearly he has links. He had his security clearance pulled along with all these people that were being investigated that were all supervised in the police department. They can't receive briefings of national security interest involving possible attacks in New York City. How is this man still the mayor? How did the governor sit there and allow this? They're all complicit. And really, Marlon, you're really seeing what it's all about. 8 million people's lives don't matter, because if something were to happen, who knows what, because the mayor doesn't know. His police commissioners didn't know. They were all busy partying, getting raided the next night. All of these people are in the same boat together, and that's the point of the show. Because I said this a long time ago, and you're hearing about it now, but the people that were listening go, no. Sal's right. John McCarty's right. Eric Dim is right. Marlon Bethel's right. You do lose your security clearance when the FBI comes knocking on your door. If you get indicted and you're the mayor, you would lose your security clearance immediately. And then it became a fact in court paperwork just the other day. So that's what the show, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to inform people. There's so much low information. It drives me crazy to hear this guy, Marlon. I hate to pick on that guy, but Benny Johnson, who very much clearly has been a paid influencer his whole life. This guy won't even pay attention to the small guy because he's a millionaire grifting announcer. This guy puts out these parroted narratives that Eric Adams is great. all of a sudden New York City needs to forget about what he's done and his police department. And now, because I guess they're embracing him in Trump world, now we have to say that he's great. I'm not going to go along with that, Marlon. That's an insane narrative, an insane thing to follow. And I know we're going down like the political road, but unfortunately, this is the one situation, one time, Marlon, you could say that the New York City mayor is so entrenched in the day-to-day operations of the police department that it has to be said, because he's the only mayor I know that is so involved that he's literally being mentioned in lawsuits. And it's very hard to do this, to get to the mayor, but he's in it because he's always involved, Marlon. And you're like, I thought the police commissioner handles this, but that's not what we're finding out, Marlon. The police commissioner doesn't even have the final say on much of the activity that goes on in the police department. It's quite disturbing, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. You mentioned John Macari. Shout out to John D. and Eric Dim with their podcast. I do remember in our conversation with John and Eric that at one point there were NYPD officers listening and downloading their episodes while they were on duty, and somehow, some way, brass found out about it, and there was like some specific order, pretty much telling officers that while you're on duty, you can't listen to their podcast. And then what I chuckle and what trips me out, that's kind of funny, is that John D and Eric turned around and filed an IA complaint against the brass for kind of like a gag order. So have you experienced something like that with your show, or?
Well, I guess the brass at this time, I think they kind of like because the cat was out of bag, and there are complaints, and they're still rolling, Marlon. It's not like, because the guy that was in charge of that complaint got transferred because the group won. So again, the head of internal affairs, another Consafrito guy himself, this guy Miguel Iglesias, this guy was basically getting rid of all these complaints, right? And because they're all in the same group together. So this complaint has changed hands, I believe now, Marlon. I hope I'm right with the number. 4 times. 4 different people have spoken,
bro. Yeah. It's like a hot potato.
It's a hot potato because all these things that they were talking about end up becoming true. How do you know? The Department of Investigation just laid out a report saying that Kaz Daughtry and now Chief of Department John Schell, another really corrupt guy, who was the chief of patrol, were engaging in illegal activity, violating the city charter, going after people online, telling people who they should vote for. This is political activity. Kind of what you said I did. You want to get rid of me for political activity. But so this is what I'm saying. And I didn't even do this stuff. I did everything off duty. There was never a mention of police department. Right. I never even put a picture. There's nothing of me in uniform anywhere doing anything political. But they want to act like the old switcheroo. Sal Greco to the police department, especially these guys, is what Eddie Caban and John Schell, what they really are. They just want you to be fooled. Again, perception management. They want to control that low information narrative and see how long they can hold it back. But the problem is me, John, Eric, and Marlon Bethel and the finest unfiltered, we're punching back with evidence and facts, and they don't have anything. The evidence will lead to what I'm telling you today, Marlon. Yeah. And I want to see anyone try to dispute it. Go back and look. Go look at the documents. There's legal documents. There's legal cases. It's all true. It's all true what I'm saying. Unfortunately for them, but.
Yep. So this is the part where I get to say what I've been preaching a lot lately is we claim that we're so transparent. That buzzword, transparency, it works with the public. We do a great job with the public. I really honestly feel that. Most police departments, even my beloved LAPD, does a great job to let the public know about critical incidents. You know, we have briefings. I know there's a Senate bill here that you have to let them know about an OIS, in custody death, or, you know, just a major, major incident that deemed to be critical. I get all that. But I often always wonder, in listening to your story, is how transparent are we amongst ourselves? And the answer to the question is no, we're not. We're not. So what you're doing, what John D and Eric are doing, man, you know what? Transparency here too. You know, I started with internal affairs and I'm the IA guy. You want transparency? Here you have it. You know, whether you like it or not, that's ultimately up to you. But we're here to provide you full transparency. And I'm tired. it just gets tiring to hear departments saying that, we're all about transparency. No, you're not. If you were, then we probably wouldn't be having podcasts to give the message to the public about things that happen inside. This has always been a very taboo, very hush hush, type of a topic. But I gotta ask. Go ahead.
Here's one thing, Omar. When you mention this, is I'm very big with the rank and file. And rank and file, we have to separate because there's like 3 tiers, as Eric Dim likes to say. They have the rank and file is like the ones that get the worst. They almost get spit on every day.
Yeah.
Then you have the crony and nepotism class, these guys. And then the final is the top. Those 2 classes, not the last one, those are the 2 that I'm aiming at most of the time on the show. And exposing is that class. The rank and file comes in, Marlon, and just wants to do a job and go home.
Yep.
They don't really care. They don't want to get involved in politics. It's, all right, I got to go run to 333 5th Street and go handle this. And then, that's what they're worried about. These other guys are worried about, am I on television? Are people talking good stuff about me? They want to act like they're actually either a movie star or a politician. In fact, they're self-impressed people, and that's the problem. That's a big problem in the New York City Police Department, and I'm starting to see it on TikTok with other departments as well, and all that other stuff you see. I mean, our friend Dominic Izzo does a good job at exposing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But rank and file, Marlon, that's the key. Those are the guys that go around community policing, go to small business, hey, is everything all right? They try to keep everything close-knit. They're usually close-knit with each other. Yes. Sometimes there's some, bickering because it's kind of like high school. But when you get to that second and third level, the way Eric Dim explains it, that's the problem, is that top tier and second tier level.
Yeah, it's candid, it's harsh, tough love. You got to go. Hey, man, let's switch gears a little bit. I need you to put your hat from your back in the days when you were in patrol, doing God's work. Let me ask you this. Worst incident in your career?
Oh, man, it's been a few. Probably crime scenes. If it's talking about active, like things that happened while I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was remember that was shooting not too long ago that happened with the 2 officers. They slipped my mind right now. It was back in either 2021 or 2022. Okay. It was right down the street from actually the hospital where everything happened next to a hospital and down the street from the precinct. I believe it was either the 2-5 or one of those precincts up north. But it was a recent incident that happened, and that was a really bad night. And what made it worse was, Marlon, when me and my partner went there and we go in there to, everybody basically goes there to either pay their respects or show their face and say, well, we're all with you. And I got a call, and I don't want to say from who or what or where, from where I was working, saying, why aren't you out there writing summonses? Why aren't you out there? So that's to show you what the mentality is from those up top versus the rank and file. So that was a bad night just because of getting that call saying they expect summonses. They expect you to go out and do work on a night when 2 officers were shot, and one, I believe they were fatally shot. Yeah. You were in the hospital. They ended up, it happened a little while after, but I mean, their family's there and you're getting, why are you there? Oh, well, I guess we shouldn't be there. We should just worry about, going out there and providing you guys with numbers. Because remember, I worked in a traffic unit that we lost the DWI unit, which is what I was in, and it turned into write summonses or else. So that was the initiative at that time. It was really sick, actually, Marlon. There was a time else I did. They wanted us to write parking summonses, which is never, I did this as a rookie because they just said try to justify your existence. If you don't make an arrest, do a parking summons. This was back in the day. Now they were saying write parking summonses because they were complaining that there were parked cars everywhere. And meanwhile, the community then hit back and actually complained on them for writing all these people's summonses because they worked in the hospital or something. So these are the kind of game. I don't like that kind of stuff, Marlon. Yeah. I don't know why. It's all revenue based. So basically, you're an arm for the mayor and his administration. You got to bring in revenue, and I thought that's not what the police department was about.
Yeah,
So that was probably the worst night. Was this night where the 2 officers were shot, and I went, and then they had to tell me, well, why aren't you doing it? Where's because they were watching the car because we had the AVL, which is, the black box they get. So what are you doing up there? I didn't know I have to ask permission. We were citywide, but that was a bad night.
Thanks for sharing, brother. I really appreciate it, man. So, look, how can we get a hold of you, and where are you at, man? And what are you doing now?
Yeah, so if you want to see me anywhere, you go to X or Instagram. It's at the Sal Greco. I'm also on Truth Social at Head of the Table. The Sal Greco Show, you can catch it on any major podcast streaming platforms. Right now, it's also on Rumble on the Sal Greco Show. But on YouTube, and what we're trying to build here is, you mentioned John and Eric, and also Marlon Bethel's the fourth member. On the Finest Unfiltered YouTube channel, you'll catch the Finest Unfiltered podcast and the Sal Greco Show. And also at 5 o'clock now on Wednesdays, there's a show called The Executive Perspective. Those were two executives of the NYPD, and they talk about a lot of police issues, New York City issues, or NYPD issues internally. Quotas was one of the things they just discussed on the last show. So we're trying to build a network there, and that's what I'm doing. I have also salgreco.com. I got to try to find a way to revamp that. But I'm so just all day long, Marlon, I get a lot of people hitting me from all sides about information if they need help and stuff like that. And that's basically what I do now, because people are disgusted with the direction of not only New York City, but the police department in general.
Yeah.
And it's just they need transparency. This is the least transparent ever the police department or New York City has been. 100%. So in the mayor's elections coming, the elections are coming in November, it's time for a change. But if you're going to stay low information, expect the same thing. If you're going to get informed, then I expect a complete dismantled police department. All these people, I expect them all to be gone come January of next year. But it's really up to the people.
That's right.
Are you going to be sheep or are you going to be a wolf? Which one are you going to be?
Sal, man, look, it's been great. I'll leave the floor up to you. We're getting ready to wrap it up. What advice do you have for anyone that's coming on the job to become a police officer?
Like I tell you with everything else, you have to do a lot of research. I would research the department, the history. I would try to talk to people. Maybe you don't want to talk like on camera about things, but maybe on the side, you have a side chat, find out what it's like in these precincts or these police departments. I would venture to say, stay away from like what's the big four? Like Boston, New York, Philadelphia, LA. Stay away from that and try to stay where it's more of a county, local, where you might, it could be corrupt, but it's I think it's more manageable. It's not at this kind of level, but there is a consofrito in your neighborhood. Trust me, it's in every neighborhood, someplace like that. So you got to always be aware of your surroundings, aware of what you're doing. But if you were going to become law enforcement, I would say stick to something local, shoot for the stars. Maybe you're better off in the feds. I think the feds have their own issues, but nothing as ridiculous as this kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't even hear them getting involved in nightclub extortion rackets. So and real estate too. You want to stay on the up and up, straight and narrow. Local is key. If not, go to the feds. And if you really want to be brave, being a lawyer is what this country is really built on. And you could always go into law. Yeah. So that would be my advice. But please don't go to the NYPD, the LAPD, the Boston PD, the Philadelphia PD, Miami PD. Stay away from the big cities. That's not the route to go, especially a new cop like today, a new cop as of today.
Salvatore, thank you so much, man, for showing up. I had a blast. You and I can talk forever. Hey, man, when I go down to go visit you guys, let's break bread, bro. All of us together.
Of course. And a cigar. I have a cigar waiting for you.
I got you. Yeah, and then you got to show me where I can get the best old fashioned. That's all I care about.
Oh yeah. Well, down here we have a little bit of everything. Look, I'm a big guy. You'll see me on Instagram always going to the same spot. So I love espresso. I had one actually today. But I also go to my friend's place, Cal Bakery. I have the best cafecito in the world. So one day it's cafecito, next day it's espresso. That's the same thing in LA. So that's my game. Small businesses, don't forget them. Always support them. They're your best friends.
That's awesome, brother. Hey, man, anything you need from me, I'm here for you. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up. And please be safe out there. And like always, don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.